You know, Druid, as you mentioned, not too much of a surprise, to be completely honest. We saw 50% is Malygos, but the fact that you know, the other half of the field has took Druid, not a surprise. There's tons of different archetypes.
And then Bloody Face versus Rivius is going to be happening on the other side. In Group B, we're going to start things off with a battle between two friends and practice partners. Just saying, Akumaker, formerly known as Jowen, they used to practice together all the time for every playoffs, and now they face off in the championship. Can't wait for that. And of course, Moyen, another practice partner of Sintolol and his German group, is going up against Tai Miao.
Footsteps of friends like Viper and Bunny Hopper, who qualified for the World Championships last season. And
of playoff appearances and qualifications from the open bracket. And the year before that, he was also in the top 8 contention, playing in the Last Call Invitational back before Pavel won. Lineup that we kind of mentioned before and why it's unusual. Control Warlock, Control Priest, very targeted at aggro, but Sintolol's not playing full aggro despite the fact that he has a reputation for doing so.
Right, a big part of the players' deck building for this was the fact that they knew their groups. Not only did they know their groups, they knew their first round opponents coming in before they even submitted their deck list. And that, GoeLeonKing said, influenced his deck building decisions because Sintolol was so well known, not just with Pirate Warrior in the ilk, but he feels very comfortable playing this more controlling lineup, and that could be a problem, especially for this particular deck from GoeLeonKing.
Yeah, and the bans already, I kind of have a mouthful to say about, but at least on Sintolol's side, makes sense. Wants to ban Shudderwock Shaman, best deck according to the matchup percentages, but banning Odd Rogue when GoeLeonKing brought something to counter aggro is certainly a very interesting call here. And, you know, one of the things about Control Warlock is that we haven't really seen this deck a lot, even on ladder. Like, usually you can see things like Odd Paladin perform well on ladder, and everyone's talking about stats. But Control Warlock's not even doing well on ladder, and we haven't seen it in tournaments. So do you think this strategy is too much of a gamble here for GoeLeonKing? Not just in this series, but for the entire tournament.
It's tough, and just to let you all know, there's a little bit of technical problem that Sintolol called an admin. They're taking care of that now. That's why we backed out of the game. But I do think that Control Warlock is a risky choice. If you do expect a very aggressive field, you can play a version of Control Warlock that is heavily biased toward beating those aggressive decks. But it is potentially very weak against slower, controlling combo types of decks. And GoeLeonKing did make a little bit of a sort of hedging of his bets with 2 copies of Demonic Project, which will be absolutely key cards to potentially give him the ability to win against Sinto's Shudderwock and Taunt Druid in this particular matchup.
That is a fiery hand, though. Double Mountain Giant, 2 Twilight Drakes. That's exactly what you're looking for when you're playing this even Warlock, to get that early game ramp and that turn 3 Mountain Giant. Now, GoeLeonKing does have some defensive tools, but when you're playing 1 Doomsayer and, you know, a little bit more top-end tech cards like Siphon Soul, Skulking Geist, and whatnot to try and remove these threats, that's going to be a little bit more difficult to deal with the early game Mountain Giants.
It is. Yeah, and Sinto has Giant into Giant available to him here, which is absolutely brutal. GoeLeonKing, you know, finds Gul'dan, but that's very early for that particular card. Crucially, GoeLeonKing did not miss an attack there. He chose not to attack because Sintolol's life total can allow him to deploy buffed Hooked Reavers, and he wants to avoid that happening. But already, Giant into Giant, it is GoeLeonKing's life total that's going to be under a lot of pressure.
I do want to emphasize that there's a very limited sample size on ladder to talk about Control Warlock, but the few hundred games or so that we do have of this exact matchup, it is the worst matchup possible for GoeLeonKing.
Oh,
it is
really bad.
Almost 80% in favor of Sintolol.
And that Black Knight is not making it any easier. The Rotten Apple Bomb roots with the fur, but goes down to the Black Knight, and GoeLeonKing's life goes down 14. And there's 20 on the board. This could just be over.
Yeah, it looks over with that Spellbreaker in hand. Almost any taunt that gets placed in the way. I mean, GoeLeonKing's healing for 2 this turn, not attacking. And a simple push through on board is going to crush it for Sintolol. GoeLeonKing took a gamble starting things off with Control Warlock, hoping that perhaps he can run into the Shudderwock Shaman as one of his better matchups. But Control accounts, we can keep boosting things to 120. Oh boy, that is exactly what you're looking for if you're Sinto. Having Wild Growth and Master Okard does have to pick up a couple more pieces. But Taunt Druid is an underrated deck that has caught people by surprise in recent times, and once again has made an appearance, much to the chagrin of LionKing, because this is the other matchup that he was hoping not to get with his Control Warlock, and perhaps that's Sinto taking advantage of LionKing's Q choice here.
Yeah, I think that we may be seeing exactly that. LionKing still on the I have to get the right matchup for this Control Warlock, and Sinto himself choosing to just punish that, essentially. LionKing does have one of the important cards in his deck in his hand in the form of Skulking Geist for this matchup.
Yes.
To be able to remove the Naturalizes from Sintolol's deck prevents him from being able to immediately activate a Hadronox. However, even if he's unable to activate a Hadronox immediately, there are the Witching Hours that he still has to, even if it does get silenced and killed. So the key card for LionKing really will be finding Demonic Project and hoping to hit Hadronox with that. But that can be very difficult because he needs to get that, be able to play it at a point where Sintolol has not yet had the opportunity to play Hadronox. And Sintolol, with the knowledge of 2 Demonic Projects in the deck, will likely play it even if it can get silenced before he can activate it.
All right, so LionKing does pick up the Demonic Project. A couple things also happened that are worth discussing about, as LionKing, who saved his coin for this Rotten Apple Bomb just to stop a little bit of early game pressure, he also chose not to play Cobalt Librarian on a 1. And he did have things like he had the first spell in hand. Instead, decided to hold on to it. Why do you think he held on to that card? Because most people would just auto-play that on 1.
Oftentimes you want to hold on to it to upgrade the spell stones. He did have 1, but he managed to hold on to it long enough to find the other. Also, the hero power from Sintolol, if he didn't have a Wild Growth, would let him just kill the body there. Whereas if he waits until later, it could potentially force Sintolol to use his mana inefficiently.
Yeah, that is also true. Forcing your opponent into less optimal plays. However, I think LionKing is also paying a little bit of the price for some of his awkward mana expenditure. He basically didn't do anything the past 2 turns. Thankfully, the Skulking Geist in the hand does change a few things, and I wonder if LionKing can also, show us a little bit of that hand-reading skill as well. Sinto kept 2 cards early on. He also played a Wild Growth and nothing else really. He's been playing the right side of his hand. So does LionKing go for the Demonic Project now in anticipation of perhaps hitting a Master O card early on?
I think that's a very reasonable option. LionKing will want to play it before Sintolol does have 9 mana, because even if it's just Hadronox, even if say Sintolol did keep Hadronox in his hand for whatever reason to protect it from something, not work out for him. Ooh, Illidan Stormrage is an amusing hit.
Oh, all of a sudden this Taunt Druid has become Token Druid.
Yeah.
Just play Illidan Stormrage.
All right, well, there is still the O card available for Sintolol. One interesting thing about LionKing's choices this game, by the way, and this is guaranteed to hit the Hadronox because both these are out here. So this is already a really tough position for LionKing.
Yes.
Plus the Hadronox on the board. He doesn't have a Twisting Nether.
Does have Defile and Spellstones.
Yeah, there's a way to set this up, I imagine, with double Defile. In order to clear everything off. The thing is, if you clear everything off, that includes the Hadronox dying, and that just brings back a board.
Right. So I think by my count, so if you spell, you're missing a 2. There's a 1, 3, 4, 5, and then if you reduce the health, you can maybe even hit that 6. But I think the problem is he can't piece everything very cleanly. He can also
Owl as well.
Yeah, Owl and then Defile.
I mean, one of the big things is that the early pressure from Sintolol actually put LionKing in a position where just the damage from this board, even ignoring the fact that there is the threat of a big board staying in play, even just a turn is scary here.
Looks like that he's going to opt to Spellstone and Defile. Let the Primordial Drake live.
And this does mean that the Hadronox dies in a position where there's only the 1 dead minion. So the first Hadronox essentially is gone without actually doing much of anything.
Yeah, and this is pretty much one of LionKing's hope, is that Sinto sputters out a little bit, has all these cards with combos, but nothing to actually develop onto the board. But with a second Dragon Hatcher coming down here, LionKing once again stuck in a similar spot.
And this is actually a difference between the builds from Sintolol and LionKing in terms of their Taunt Druid decks. Sintolol with the sort of greedier version with 2 copies of Sleepy Dragon, 2 copies of Dragon Hatcher. That is what allowed him to have access to a Dragon Hatcher in his deck for the Master O card, as well as one in his hand to play and immediately create another gigantic board.
Right, and then on LionKing's side, he also has to eventually win back the board, and that's where things like Voidlord and Blade Reaver Gul'dan come into play, but he's so far away from that. And his hand is just looking very awkward right now. Sinto now takes the initiative once again. We'll see how he ends up developing. I mean, that Illidan Storm Rage is pretty appetizing at this spot.
Branching paths too, if he wants, for all the tokens. It's actually kind of crazy.
I was saying, all of a sudden, I'm the token druid.
That can get sacrificial facted, though.
Oh, that's
Illidan
right, yeah.
Can.
The stack pack.
But I believe there's still a dragon for the Hatcher to get? Yes. So this is still an ugly position for Sintolol, or rather for LionKing. He does have the Spellstone plus Defile, which can't get everything. There's just too many big things on here. He could Siphon Soul on one of the big dragons.
Yeah.
You can't quite Siphon plus Spellstone plus Defile is what would clear the board.
Oh no, he needed that at the beginning of the turn, because if he had a 3 health, he could Spellstone the Sleepy Dragon for 2, so it'd be a 1, 2, 3, 4 with the Shroomber, and then 5 on the Illidan. That would have been great, but that life tap instead of having that Gnome Feratu. Awkward for LionKing.
Yeah, the Sack Pact is definitely nice here. Killing that and getting him back to 14.
Right.
He could use...
He could Spellstone Defile and Gnome Feratu just to fill out his mana. Maybe even hit really important cards like another Witching Hour, for example. Just put up one less board opportunity.
The really key thing for Sintolol now is actually Cube, because Cube is his only ability to activate Hadronox from Witching Hour, essentially.
That's a good point.
Yeah, Spellstone plus Defile.
I mean, he has a high chance of hitting one of those 3 cards, Witching Hour or the Cube.
It's Lich King.
Oh wow.
That's actually not bad. Ooh, but does give him a cube.
Yeah. I mean, Sinto was definitely on a draw for this cube. LionKing does not have an answer. And the Owl Siphon Soul is great, but you have a big board to deal with afterwards.
Yeah, I think this may just be it as far as giving LionKing any outs to this. Even if he finds Twisting Nether,
right?
He just activates that cube, puts 2 Hadronoxes in play. Which does mean that he doesn't die this turn.
Right, I mean, is he tapping for that Twisting Nether? Voidlord, just way too late.
Not going to cut it at this point, just too much for Sintolol, and that's a quick 2-0 lead for the German player. We said that LionKing was going to have a...
Because the groups were released before they submitted their deck lists.
Right.
So LionKing was like, well, I'm going to go off the premonition that Sinto likes to play aggro. In fact, he was just so far off the mark that his lineup just got hard countered instead.
Well, he does have double Demonic Project in this opening hand, so these are going to be some powerful tools for him in this particular game.
True. And also, to be fair, this is the best deck that LionKing can face off against in this series. I mean, most of his more favorable matchups already have been passed. So Control Warlock versus Shadowwalk Shaman is his best out here. So this is the matchup he was fishing for from the beginning, and Sinto now has a 2-0 lead. We'll see if he can carry that to victory, or we'll see a reverse sweep, which we've been seeing a lot in this metagame. Going back to the playoffs, it seemed like reverse sweeps were very common since Boomsday.
Well, the turn 2 Manatide Totem from Sintolol, thanks to the coin, going to give him some card draw. Not going to bother trying to do anything to protect it, since it's pretty much guaranteed to die, though. Potentially has to follow up, thanks to that Farsight, of Chain Gang into another next turn.
Yep. I wonder how much LionKing is aware of Sinto.
Oh dear, we're talking about the Demonic Project. That's Gnome Feratu getting the job done as well.
I mean, I was talking about it, like, I wonder how much he's aware that Sinto and Shadowwalk Shaman do not have a very good relationship. They are on, a non-toxic...
abusive relationship, apparently, with Sintolol. Jeez. All right, well, that's the sort of thing that can turn the tide of this particular matchup.
Right.
Sintolol is going to have to win without his full Shutterwalk combo, and he is playing against a deck that is very capable of dealing with just minion-centric boards.
Right.
And that's all he really has left. That plus Hagatha spells is essentially Sintolol's remaining game.
Hagatha is a very legitimate win condition against these slower Warlock decks. In fact, the first time we were seeing the Warlock be able to be outvalued by some of these Shamans is through Hagatha, back when even Shaman was putting it in.
Back when TJ won himself a steak dinner.
That's right.
See, Sinto didn't have quite the epic flip-out reaction that he has had in the past, to this particular that particular burn. A little more reserved now.
Right.
Trying to figure out a way to win. I mean, this is a championship event, so definitely needs to remain focused and figure out what his remaining win condition is.
So one of the ways that Sinto can win also is that Control Warlock tends to have some awkward tech cards from time to time. Things like, the Skulking Geist and whatnot, and Gluttonous, who's not going to really be helpful whatsoever in this matchup. So maybe Sinto can catch LionKing with an awkward hand and pressure his opponent enough. But I mean, LionKing's just using his Hellfires just to stave off that damage and keep the board clean, and just has to survive long enough for him to get Blood Reaver Gul'dan online, and then perhaps just outvalue Sinto.
And that Gul'dan is already in LionKing's hand,
Yeah.
along with Skull the Minari that can make that Pit Lord a lot less painful that he got from his Demonic Project. And there's potential additional win condition with Rin the First Disciple as well if he decides that he's going to try to end this in a proactive way, but does decide to take the Felguard to make his Skull in his hand a bit stronger.
Yeah, that gives him the ability to play Skull and not just, do nothing.
Right.
And also, you never know. It kind of puts the opportunity for you to block damage, which might give you a little bit extra breathing room, and as a result, save an extra piece of removal. I like it. It's more guaranteed. And your opponent likes to save hexes anyways for the Void Lord, so you most likely will be running to that hex.
And it is worth noting that Sintolol is not entirely out of the ability to sort of combo with his Shutterwalk. He does still have Soul of the Gorgon. So if he does get a Shutterwalk with chain gangs that go off first, that could potentially Zola,
right.
He does have the ability to continue to Shutterwalk. It's just much more difficult and much costlier than you were able to get the combo off with Grumble.
Wow, Void Lord being drawn is going to be pulled out next turn. So LionKing has a lot of minion presence that's going to be coming out next turn. I mean, even this turn with the Pit Lord being pulled out still puts out a reasonable amount of stats. LionKing now is wondering if he even wants to life tap. His opponent has played Hagatha, which means that Sinto is already engaging to the long game plan. Does LionKing want to accelerate his own fatigue, and he chooses not to do anything? I think this is a very good demonstration of restraint and understanding of where this game is headed.
Giggling Inventor is the draw for Sintolol. It's another card that can give him more of a board presence style Shutterwalk potential victory.
Right.
Though does mean that he has to punch through with that Shutterwalk against the mass removal rather than just getting automatic triggers with Life Drinker and such, thanks to Grumble, which was burned.
Yep, that's right. Giggling Inventor started to be put into Shutterwalk Shaman. It just made sense. Put a lot of lines of defense. And more importantly, too, buy Sinto time. Like, one of the ways Hagatha can win is actually simply generating minion presence on its own. You can get things like Feral Spirits. You can get the Voltaic Burst. And one of the new cards from the State Project, which is the Stormbringer, is a legendary spell that transforms your entire board into legendary minions. So while you might think, okay, Shaman spells, maybe just removal, maybe some burn, it also has the ability to generate board presence, sometimes out of nowhere. So I've seen Hagatha pull Shaman from the depths despite losing Shutterwalk combos.
Yeah, Hagatha is always the X factor in these sort of situations where you think, okay, well, they can't possibly get this done, and then they find a bunch of Lava Bursts, or they find cards that generate minions, like Voltaic Burst.
Yes.
Like Voltaic Burst into the Stormbringer, and suddenly there's two Alakirs, and you're dead. What's going on?
Well, that's a Hail Mary for Sinto. And then, of course, things like Elemental Reaction, another new spell from the Boomsday Project saying draw a card. If you play an Elemental, you draw a copy of it. But does he even want to draw a card? So he's probably in that same boat, too. 2 hexes, 2 prime hex removal targets, but we'll see what Sinto ends up drawing here first. He doesn't have a board that can kill these minions, so he can stall. And damage really doesn't truly matter for now until it gets to fatigue stages. I think hexing the Void Lord perhaps is a little bit more threatening, but Rin is also still scary in its own right.
Yeah, there is already Skull of Minari in play, so there's no threat of the actual Azari combo, but there is the threat of just making a bunch of demons and then coming out with the 10-10.
True. Yeah, that is true. The Skull Minari and the Rin First Disciple interaction. Anti-synergy depends on how you look at it. More removal being picked up for Sinto. Hex the Void Lord. I think that's the most reasonable option here. Void Lord is very scary because it almost ensures that you won't be able to hit your opponent's life totals for a very long time, especially if your opponent has Blood Reaver Gul'dan.
Well, the Shroom Brewer is a draw for GoeLeonKing.
Yeah.
Not super important at this stage. He does have the Gul'dan, which he could choose to get online right now. We'll bring back the Felguard as well as Headboard.
Still a reasonable amount of board presence, and I think what's important for GoeLeonKing is that he's able to prepare himself for fatigue stages as early as possible. You can see that Sinto was simply drawing a card from the Elemental Reaction because he would keep parity with GoeLeonKing's pace for fatigue. But from this point on, drawing an extra card with life tap is suicide. If you're not going to life tap for the rest of the game, you might as well be life biting.
Is that the ability?
Oh, sorry, bite life? Or is it siphon life?
Siphon life.
Okay, sorry. I just see the mouth chewing enemy.
Life bite as the.
I feel like
technical spell description of life bite.
I won't even defend myself.
Oh, well, there's the Zola. So we were talking about how the Zola can be important with Shudderwalk to actually give you triggers. I believe Sinto has played 2 of his chain gangs. So that does mean that there's, if he does find Shudderwalk, there's a good chance that he'll be able to actually get the Shudderwalk off, get additional copies. So there actually is the onus on GoeLeonKing to end the game. He doesn't simply have inevitability like you'll often have when you are Gul'dan in some of these situations.
Yeah, not nearly as much, but I still argue that perhaps...
He's certainly in good shape.
Yeah, Sinto might be the one who has to prove a way to win, because GoeLeonKing can rely on his hero power, while Hagatha is less consistent. So if you're stuck with Forked Lightning and it just becomes a no-minion board battle with hero powers in a vacuum, Gul'dan will win. And I think Sinto recognizes that, so by using the Zola on Ziliax, he gives himself an opportunity to just continue to generate minion presence. Cryostasis is also an interesting pickup too.
Yeah, that allows him to get his Ziliax out of range of the Hump or the Life Bite ability.
Oh yes, Nosferatu. I mean, it isn't necessarily... we don't know exactly what GoeLeonKing will be able to burn off the top, but any card is okay because it just accelerates Sinto towards fatigue.
We're going to see Shroom Brewer come down and heal up this Lord because he does know, he does know that the Ziliax was copied by Zola. So GoeLeonKing decides, I am going to protect this. Sinto does have the Ziliax. He can actually Giggling Inventor into Ziliax if he wants to kill the 4/4.
Yeah, I mean, the Giggling Inventor 2 is also an interesting proposition on whether or not Sinto wanted to Zola that, because he could be thinking, I want to stall out and maximize my resources, but prevent my opponent from attacking the face. He knows that GoeLeonKing has a few threats in the deck. But I think this is a very reasonable outcome here. Sinto just utilizing Avalanche. But still, the question remains on my mind is, how will he be able to decisively win the board if his opponent just saves Twisting Nether for Shudderwalk?
Yeah. I mean, there is the Zola. So Volcano's actually, a totally happy hit from Sintolol's perspective, because he is the one who needs to actually, as you mentioned, end this. Demonic Project does hit a Void Ripper and turns that Giggles into a Sneaky Devil.
Yeah, much worse for Sintolol here, as he doesn't have a way to defend himself immediately from this board presence without using removal spells.
Amusingly enough, the Sneaky Devil does have stealth, so it can't be sacrificial pacted.
That's right. Usually the Sacrificial Pact is a backup option in case your opponent got some really insane minion like Dreadlord or Doomguard.
Perplexing.
Yeah, I mean, and Sinto's even deeper in fatigue than I recall because of that Nosferatu. He's 2 cards with him. Special Spirit helps give him value off of a big minion.
He doesn't really have much of a big minion remaining. It's true. Eureka? If he does find another big minion.
Oh, well, okay. I was like, well, if you Eureka, you can get a copy of Shutterwalk. This doesn't really matter. It's the same thing.
Yeah, well, you don't get your battle.
Exactly. I think Sinto is going to hope that he picks up Unstable Evolution or the Stormbringer. Ways to develop the board and make it something bigger than what it originally was.
And now LionKing, oof. He does find a Void Lord. There is still a Hex remaining in Sinto's hand. That Void Lord can be answered, but it will come out for free. Yes. Thanks to the Skull. He actually does not have a copy of Gluttonous Ooze in his deck, so no way to prevent that Skull from giving LionKing free demons.
Yeah, and this is something that, you know, a lot of Shutterwalk Shamans run into when they play Hagatha, which is they just pretty much doing nothing and passing a lot of the times because they have so much removal options. So, I mean, when you see some people who all in on the Hagatha plan, they start saving their minions early on. Remember when Sinto was playing like his Glacial Shard at base with his Serenite Chain Gang to hope to pressure his opponent? It was a worthy gambit, as Sinto does not get a very good outcome on the Lightning Storm.
He does have Forked Lightning that he can fire off here to clear both of these, but...
it's just one of those things where a lot of players do end up planning that out long term. Like, okay, I might need 3 more minions to generate spells to give myself higher probability of developing a better board. And I think Sinto's paying the price for that right now.
All right, well, he will keep that pressure on, however meager the pressure is against Siphon Life. Void Lord does come down, thanks to the Skull, and seals continue. As LionKing is humping away and continuing to make demons and building toward that Azari.
Interesting that LionKing felt threatened enough to Sacrificial Pact the demon on Sintolol side, but I think LionKing says, you know what, I want to have a little bit of board so that way I can threaten my opponent. But also, I don't know if I could be able to hit another demon reasonably for a long time.
I think a big part of that was getting use out of that.
Right.
Not necessarily that he felt threatened, it was that this was the last opportunity he would have to get value out of the Sacrificial Pact. You know, and now that there's no minions on the opposing side of the board, he can just fire off both seals rather than using his hero power if he wants.
I like it. Just get more board presence. You also saw Volcano be used and burned, so less chance.
Acolyte's a very awkward draw for Sinto here. He's down to just 4 cards in his deck.
That's what Urshock's for.
Yeah.
Urshock your own Acolyte.
I mean, we might... Are you going to see him Eureka and play another and just get himself fatigued to death?
But the Eureka doesn't give him a spell, right? Because it's just summoned?
No, so he would have to play the Acolyte to get a spell here.
Yeah. That is unfortunate for Sinto. Just a very awkward card to utilize. Eureka better for those cheesy Malygos Shaman decks as opposed to this Grumble-less Shutterwalk Shaman. Shutterwalk, by the way, being in the bottom 4 or 5 cards in the deck.
Yeah, even if that Grumble weren't gone, or just one of the bottom cards of the deck, it's entirely possible that LionKing would be able to actually just close this out. All right, well, gonna play it and leave it up.
Oh, Sinto says, I want to draw cards because I want to get to my Shutterwalk. I think he realizes his best chance is to hope that LionKing does not draw out his deck, does not have Twisting Nether. He has to hope that Twisting Nether is in the bottom 2 cards of his deck.
Oh, there's the Shutterwalk.
Okay. Well, Drog, Blue Meter, the best individual minion out of this pool. And he's putting on reasonable pressure, too.
It is. There's Giggles, but I suspect Shutterwalk will come down this turn.
That's right.
And when the Zola triggers is crucially important.
Yes.
MC Tech gets something.
Oh.
Chain Gang.
It stole a minion first,
Oh,
though.
oh, it hit it hit the Stonehill defender. Betrayal from the mind control tech, but
perhaps another chance.
Blazing Invocation. Okay, he could find another one.
He's pausing for just a second to see if he needs to Earthshock something before him, but I think Blazing Invocation is a clear play here.
No Shutterwalk. That was obviously what Sinto was looking for.
But he can pick up a minion to get another spell to potentially keep him alive. But the problem is, too, is that these are all very awkward cards.
They are.
Spiteful Summoner, if he doesn't have any meaningful spells, very bad stats. Witchwood Piper, no dragon in the hand, and very expensive, but sticky. And Witchwood Piper, you don't want to draw more minions than Accelerate Fatigue, if he even has minions. I think he has maybe a life trigger remaining. And now LionKing will continue to dominate the board, and he can clear everything through a very easy defile. Or even just
he just pushed for...
Oh, he is unafraid.
Oh, all right.
I like it.
Well, there's a Glacial Shard that can slow down the Azari. That's
an amazing draw.
Yeah,
right now.
that's a fantastic draw for Sintolol, because that defile usage did allow LionKing to push some damage, but there's still a healing rain left. And I'm just trying to figure out if there was a way that LionKing could have used his resources a little bit more efficiently.
Right.
Because now, if Sintolol is able to establish like a big board, and there is still the Twisted Damage, it's probably not something that's going to be problematic for him.
That's where the Ancestral Spirit comes in.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's other spells for Shaman to really make that wonky, and Ancestral Spirit's one of them. Spirit Echo is another.
Yeah.
That's a useless card here for LionKing. The Cobalt Librarian's a dead draw. Oh, he's just gonna play it.
Disagrees.
Wonder what he's looking for. Oh, Skulking Geist.
That's actually shockingly good here. There's 2 Earth Shocks and a Frost Shock. Not going to go ahead and play. He can assume those Earth Shocks are there, I think.
Right.
The Frost Shock, obviously, is a card that's generated from the Hagatha ability, so not something he could really expect.
Yeah, but, Sinto, I wonder if he's going to use those Earth Shocks, too, because there's a high chance that LionKing has drawn his Skulking Geist at this stage. Let's see what he gets off his Giggling Antenna first. Another Blazing Invocation!
Okay.
I like it. I like it.
And this enables Sintolol. The Earth Shock clears off the Taunt and the Poisonous. Frost Shock slows down Azari again.
So he's not using his Blazing Invocation, kind of accepts that it might be thrown out here, but I think Sinto's not as concerned because LionKing also has to worry a little bit about the board state too. Like, this is a turn where LionKing might justifiably try to clear a little bit of the board, but there's not too much of a threat at the same time. It's very awkward. It's like just enough to be annoying, but not threatening enough to pull
but
a trigger.
now, hold on. Sintolol did not play that Blazing Invocation, and there's the Skulking Geist,
right,
which hits the Invocation. We see Sintolol just shaking his head. He chose not to play that last turn. He could have played that and tried to get another Shutterwalk. I think Sintolol just forgot there was Skulking Geist that would essentially guaranteed to be in LionKing's hand at this point.
Right.
And I think we saw that reaction from him shaking his head as soon as it happened.
I thought that he was purposely just letting it go. But I guess in this case, I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but if he flat out forgot, that could be a disastrous result if Sintolol ends up losing this game and this series.
I mean, to be fair, the chances that he hit something like Shutterwalk are pretty low.
Right.
But it's a chance. Whereas if he puts his opponent in a position where they're essentially guaranteed to play, the Skulking Geist can get rid of it, there is no chance.
Yeah, it's a non-zero factor, and actually much higher than non-zero. To give him even like a nice powerful lead, there's plenty of other battle cries that could perhaps bail him out. What if he hits Deathwing and it comes down to 0 removal from the control warlock? There's just a lot of battle cries that can bail you out.
Well, much like he could have essentially assumed that Skullgeister in the hand, he can assume there's a Twisting Nether and a Siphon Soul in the hand. So
Right.
there's a removal waiting on the other side.
Assuming it comes down to that last battle of attrition,
Right,
though.
right.
And I mean, there's also not to mention the spell that Sintolol gains from playing a minion.
Yeah, absolutely.
off
It's
the
a
lane.
resource that's very important in the game.
So many bloody decisions.
Is there Defile Clear of some capacity? I think so,
can it-
but
Not that lets him actually connect with his Azari.
right. Yeah, Cesare would die in almost any removal outcome here. But he can silence the Worm Guard, which is really nice. And I think Lion King's main objective here is just to stay alive and stall, because fatigue is on his side.
Right.
Oh, but he wants to hit base with 10. I like it.
This gets 10 damage in, and this is a fatigue situation where Sintolol has no resources left.
Right.
He can play that Life Drinker, see what he finds.
That's almost his last chance, because he knows that Twisting Nether and Siphon Soul still exist. Well, he should know that Twisting Nether and Siphon Soul exist. So almost any chance of having a big minion or a big board stick in the last few turns of fatigue here are very low. So he has to hope that Life Drinker comes up huge in this spot.
What can he get? He can get...
Blazing Invocation.
It could be anything.
It could even
It could be a Blazing Invocation.
Blazing Invocation. Which gets another Life Drinker. Which gets another Blazing Invocation.
The Blazing Invocation gets Shudderwalk, which gets Blazing Invocation into Grumble, into the full combo.
And he needs to get something.
Fox is a Rock Biter weapon.
Would have been great with the Wind Fury if he still had it.
He can Avalanche, kill off the Azari and slow things down, but slowing things down is exactly what Lion King wants because he has Life Buddy.
Yes, this is a solvable position for Lion King, even though 3 spells from Hagatha have been generated. You can just account for everything. Take your time. Fatigue's on your side. Love the hero power to face. The minion isn't a threat. It's the fatigue race.
Sintolol is entirely out of resources.
That's
He knows
game.
it, and Lion King is on the board, prevents the sweep from Sintolol, and remains alive in the series.
That was crucial, not only because that was match point, used to be in the past, but I mean, he's still up 2-1, and he has very good matchups still, especially against Control Priest, which is coming up now.
Yeah, Lion King's lineup is very built to fight against aggressive decks, and Shudderwalk Shaman, not an aggressive deck. It is one that is very powerful against decks that are filled with removal, and that's exactly what Lion King has here in Control Priest. He's going to struggle to close out the game, even with his burst combos against the healing that Sinto has available alongside the Shudderwalk combo itself. No Gnome-Faratu's Demonic Projects to disrupt Sinto here.
That's right. I did want to point out one thing, too, in that I also personally believe Lion King banned his best matchup in the series by banning Odd Rogue. When he has an anti-aggro lineup, bans pretty much the only aggro deck in Sinto's lineup. He, in the matchup spreadsheet, he actually lowered his odds of winning by 6%. He went from 40 to 34.
Yeah, we didn't really get into that when we first saw the ban. That's a very confusing ban choice to me. Because, as you mentioned, his lineup is built to beat aggressive decks, and well, Sintolol has one of those, and now he doesn't. Now he has 3 combo control style decks, so I'm curious what the thought process was for Lion King in determining that ban, given the structure of his lineup.
I personally think that is a big factor in what costs him extra, perhaps this even series, giving him a fighting chance. And however, I also have been on the receiving end of knowing what a player where you're like, you're kind of so far in your own head that you overthink things. Or perhaps you just weren't thinking at all. Like, I mean, maybe what ends up happening is the admins go to the players and say, what do you want to ban? And then they tell you the 4 classes. And he says, Rogue. And his mind immediately might be thinking Quest Rogue. And he's like, okay, well, maybe I want to ban Quest Rogue instead. And that could be a complete brain fart. And players have been reported. I have heard stories of players doing that. Just completely forget.
I would think for your first match of a tournament, when you've had like a week and a half or whatever, knowing your opponent and like a week with the deck list, that you probably don't mistake your opponent's Odd Rogue for Quest Rogue at that point.
I'm reaching, but that's why it's so baffling to me how we got to this point. Regardless.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. It is a very peculiar decision from Lion King in terms of his ban decision. But here we are. We are now in game number 4. And LionKing still has an uphill battle, not just in terms of the game count, but in terms of the matchups remaining.
But the important thing is that LionKing does have 2 really important cards, and one of them is Shadow Reaper Anduin, and the other is Alexstrasza. That can help him put a lot of pressure before Sinto can get his healing range, before he can get his defenses sorted. Because, I mean, Alexstrasza is still just a threat in herself. So if LionKing can sprint to what is potentially the finish line by getting the Shadow Reaper Anduin out, I mean, that might be his ticket to win the game. That is how Control Priest will win in most ladder cases, which is why it even has a competitive win rate against Shutterwalk Shaman recently.
Well, Sintolol finds his Keleseth a little late. Keleseth not necessarily a huge factor in this matchup because Psychic Scream and others can take care of even your buff boards.
Yep.
I wonder
if Sinto just wants to Zola the Saturday Chain Gang right now. Usually it's just good form to try to get as many copies as possible of Saturday Chain Gang to increase your chances of Grumble and Shutterwalk.
He does have these Lightning Storms as well, and the Cleric is a little bit scary because LionKing accumulating significant resources to give him access to the Mind Blasts to go with that Alexstrasza plus Shadow Reaper Anduin can be a little scary. So I think that preventing LionKing from getting additional cards from that Cleric has to be one of the things that's top of his mind.
Ooh,
interesting.
So he just wants to draw to his win condition, and I can understand this logic because Sinto says LionKing's best chance is to rush this game with Shadow Reaper Anduin, and I need to draw my win conditions as opposed to simply stall out the board. And this Psychic Scream is going to stall that significantly, so Sinto was hedging against that as well, because if he Psychic Screams the board, he'll have more Saturday Chain Gangs to play anyways if he draws it out. It makes sense.
And Priest, at least in the build that LionKing is playing, there's no copies of Shattered Pain, not really a common card in these particular decks. Doesn't have the greatest tools to deal with the Manatide Totem.
Right.
Sintolol would need to find Duskbreaker in order to actually get that off the board effectively.
And it's also brilliant too, because if he knows that LionKing is clearly trying to rush his win condition by playing Shadow Reaper Anduin on 8, that means he can get 2 draws off the Manatide Totem. So that setup from Sinto was fairly astute. I think that was a really nice 2-3 turn line that he found here to potentially draw a lot. Because LionKing, he wants to play the Shadow Reaper Anduin and Alexstrasza and then finish off with Mind Blasts. But now Sinto's like, okay, well maybe I'll have more turns to draw my removal, my healing rain.
Yeah, and you do want to put yourself in a position where you have the tools to actually finish the game off once you pull off the trigger on the Alexstrasza. You don't want to play your Anduin, play your Alexstrasza, and then be like, oh, I don't have any Mind Blast at all, and give them time to find those healing rains.
So using Hex, he has Volcano, so he doesn't have too much to worry about, and even with that 1/1 Searing Totem, can even challenge Alexstrasza with Hagatha.
Well, yeah, we do see Pyromancer into Shadow Visions, which will take out the Totem. There's another Shadow Visions.
Yeah, I like that. Just gives you more ways to activate the Pyromancer.
Yeah, you can heal it up and then Visions again, which takes out the Life Drinker here. Finds another Shadow Vision, so... The Shadow Visions train is also a way that you can just deal incremental damage with... Is there another? No, there isn't. The glowy.
Yeah.
This is something that's important, okay? The extended glow rather than just the color. I can actually tell when Keleseth is active.
I kind of wish it wasn't, because then we would have like a consecutive championship where Keleseth was once again played simply as a tempo 2-2.
You can actually Zola Keleseth and a triple Keleseth trigger here. I said that Keleseth wasn't that big a deal in this matchup because of Psychic Scream and such. This is 3 Keleseths. The next time he draws one of those totems that was shuffled into his deck from Psychic Scream, it's going to be an aggro totem. It's going to get to attacking.
Yeah, it's basically totem gold. At that point.
Almost. It went in after the first one, but it's close, yeah.
And LionKing already used Primordial Drake, so easy board clears.
This is turning into a crazy game for Sintolol here. Yeah. Triple Keleseth. LionKing is not in a position where he is able to close this game out anytime soon. He doesn't even have a great answer to just this board. He can heal up his Alexstrasza.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, well that is a direction you can go. Alexstrasza hit you.
And I guess it makes a lot of sense too. LeonKing says, you know what? Enough chit chat. I have Mind Blast, Shadow Visions, and Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Yeah, okay.
Clearly, is he going to win the board over time through Battle of Attrition?
Well, Sintolol can clear this and Hagatha to give himself some armor at least, which will put him out of range of potential damage here.
Yeah, and also set up the potential to draw Healing Rain off of some minions like Giggling Inventor.
Yeah, so Sintolol was like, all right, well, I'm going to win any kind of grindy game with the power of triple Keleseth, and LeonKing decides we're not going to grind. We're going to get down to business, and Alexstrasza is going to try and close things out very quickly. And Sintolol recognizes, well, that's not going to be good for me.
Yes.
I need to Hagatha. He has no cheap minion right now to dig further spell, but does put himself up to 17.
Doing. Sinto, unhappy to see that. But Healing Rain can pretty much give Sinto an extra turn or two here. Stall out.
I was really looking to find Healing Rain. Finds there's a Totem Golem Manatide, 3/6 even.
And they will draw towards his Healing
true.
Rain.
So now, the LeonKing could theoretically end the game with double Mind Blast. If he picks up Mind Blast, that's just 16 damage. And that's going to be something that Sintolol is very scared of. I think if I'm in Sintolol's shoes, I want to try and churn through my deck as quickly as possible and find that Healing Rain. So not only does playing Manatide here give him the ability to get another spell, obviously, but puts him in a position where he finds a Spirit Echo. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he knows that LeonKing has a couple of Shadow Priest, so playing Spirit Echo actually kind of helps his opponent, because if he has the Volcano, his opponent builds a Manatide. So using it in this spot would actually be ill-advised. Now, granted, with Twilight Acolyte, that could always be the case. Like, any minion you play can be stolen by Priest, but then it consumes your opponent's mana. If you allow them to Cabal Shadow Priest target, they can just Hero Power you twice, deal 4 damage.
And this is kind of an odd spot, because Sintolol also needs to consider, like, does he need to get cards out of his hand?
Oh, that's true too. Too many cards.
Yeah, and that's exactly what
he knows.
Fire that off. There's Healing Rain.
He knows about too many cards.
There's Ziliax with +3/+3. LeonKing, Holy Fire, Mind Blast. He has not quite enough damage. That armor is keeping Sintolol out of reach of the burn damage that LeonKing has available.
Right.
And if he plays a minion, that Ziliax is going to give him the business.
That is true. And it's hard not to want to steal this Manatide.
It absolutely is.
Change your mind.
And he's going to steal that Manatide Totem.
Ziliax tech. With, you even can play Giggling Inventor too with that, but it does have the Healing Rain too.
5/6 Chain Gang.
So if you play Giggling Inventor plus the Ziliax, you heal for 7, and then you go up to 18. That puts you out of the that 16 threshold that people are really scared of. But your opponent's also been seeing Shadow Visions off of Shadow Visions as well. I think Sinto might just do this for Healing Rain. Be extra safe here.
Bloodlust. Ooh. So now you could Bloodlust, kill both your opponent's minions, gain 9, still have Healing Rain in hand.
Yes, I like that. Squeezing out value.
Wow,
and
yeah.
Get an expensive card out of your hand.
Right,
we're
yeah.
kind of talking about that.
We were saying it's important to leave room in your hand. This is actually a big hit here.
I like this. Constantly adapting his game plan.
I think he wants to trade off the Healing Totem at this point, too, because of the hand size issue.
Exactly.
Gets himself up to 20. And now LeonKing, he's got to deal with this Ziliax.
That's right. Does have the Dustbreaker pickup. But that's where Healing Rain comes in clutch here for Sinto.
And he's got 18 life, 12 more from the Healing Rain. There's another Mind Blast from LeonKing, so has the tools to keep grinding down.
Right. Both Mind Blast and Shadow Vision still remains in LeonKing's deck as well, which means he can get the mythical 422 of Mind Blast.
All right, well, Chain Gang does provide him with some ice fishing, not too exciting. But now with this triple Keleseth buff, this is just generating a lot.
Yeah, this is
it's 15 on the board.
Yeah, that's like a board you want a Shadow Reaper Anduin. He already just used a Dustbreaker. This is already looking a little tricky. Wow, that's a lot of damage.
That's the second Visions, so that could find the other Mind Blast. Could also find a Psychic Scream if he needs to keep himself alive.
Right. It's tempting to want to use your expensive cards like Holy Fire this turn, but with Mind Blast in the deck remaining, I think LionKing may want to guarantee a 4th Mind Blast to try to squeeze out damage, and he still does have a turn to stall because he can squeeze in Divine Favor perhaps as well. This is a little tricky for LionKing.
It is.
Okay, he wants to just go for the burn plan.
$21. He does find the 3rd Mind Blast.
3rd Mind Blast
19.
is 19. It's not quite enough.
The Elemental Reaction is turned on, by the way, from
2 copies of Shadow Walk.
2 copies of Healing Rain. Oh, it is 2 Shadow Walks! Oh my!
And the Shadow Walks draw, you know, they might look expensive and whatnot, and you know, like, oh, don't you want to wait for Grumble? But Life Drinker's been played.
He's played a Life Drinker.
So it might be important just to stay alive.
And he's also played 2 Zolas and a Chain Gang. I believe 2 Chain Gangs, yeah. So
Zap is,
we're not going to be
get out of his hand, but he also doesn't really want to overload. That's kind of the problem with these spells.
Well, that actually means that at least the Shudderwalk, even with Zola, won't actually put anything in his hand because he'll get the Haggatha trigger first unless he plays a spell. But here, you know, he's actually just threatening lethal damage too.
Right.
LionKing needs to react to this.
Yeah, and Divine Favor puts him at 20 because it heals you for 6, and just a single Shudderwalk with the Life Drinker.
Right.
So LionKing, I think he's going to dig for that Psychic Scream instead.
Yeah, there's Psychic Scream. But if he Psychic Screams now, and then just gets Shudderwalked, he needs to deal with the Shudderwalk.
Right. And I mean, Sinto just got a lot of information too. Shadow Vision is a Psychic Scream, so he had to rip the second Psychic Scream 1 out of 8 if he develops that Shudderwalk board, and he has 2 of them, so he can definitely afford to do so.
Here it is, Shudderwalk comes down.
Oh, by the way, 3 more Keleseth buffs. Yeah, all those 5/6s you shuffled into the deck, they're gonna come back.
Yeah, so he's got the Shudderwalk, no Zola additional Shudderwalk. I guess it's one of the Zola Shudderwalks, rather.
Yeah, this game is all but over. LionKing draws his 2nd Twilight Drake, and he's just dead.
Yeah, and there it is. So in not full combo fashion, but full Keleseth fashion, Sintolol is able to take a favor.